My parents intended to take away my lottery winnings in order to finance the future of their golden child, wrecking mine in the process. They ejected me when I refused. However, karma had other ideas from the time I was old enough to comprehend what justice was. It was evident that the concept of justice was ambiguous in our home and significantly biased in favor of my younger sister, Jennifer. It wasn't that I was mistreated or neglected by our parents. The first portion of the narrative was recounted in our rooms, but Jennifer seemed to have all of their attention and resources as children because of her vivacious appeal and incessant demands. As soon as Jennifer selected pink to be her favorite hue, her room was painted in her preferred shade, filled with toys and books and adorned with posters of her favorite pop artists. Mine was still the same drab beige as it had been when we first moved in, with furniture that worked but was clearly worn out. Usually, the response to my requests was, "We'll see," which frequently meant, "Probably not." Favoritism wasn't limited to material possessions, however. It extended to the way we commemorated our milestones and accomplishments. I can very clearly recall my 10th birthday. At the time, I had a strong interest in painting, coloring and sketching for hours on end. I hoped that my enthusiasm would be recognized just this once. I was given a pack of generic colored pencils instead. 2 years later, Jennifer's 10th birthday was celebrated with a lavish cake in the style of a castle and pony rides. All a child could ask for, and more. It was the same at school. I was a respectable student who always did my best to bring home good scores in the hopes that I may receive some recognition for it. Jennifer appeared to get it so easily. Every time I made the honor roll in high school, I hurried home with the certificate in the hopes of receiving a response that was more than indifferent. That's good. However, Jennifer felt as though she had won a Nobel Prize when she received a B+ on an exam. They even celebrated something that never happened by taking her out to an expensive supper, with my academic accomplishments. The disparities, both monetary and emotional, became more pronounced as we aged. Any teen's high school graduation should be a major event, right? I received a handshake from my father and a $50 card from my mother upon graduating, which was pleasant but quite unimpressive. Instead than celebrating years of hard work, it felt more like a slap on the back. However, the entire 9 yards pulled out a brand new automobile and waited for Jennifer in the driveway, replete with a large red ribbon, when it was her graduation day. They hosted a reception that night that was more akin to a royal feast. There was a lot of food and laughter, the type that had been lacking at my own graduation, and relatives I hadn't seen in years turned up. I began to think that perhaps I was the issue, because I was always surrounded by this sense of disinterest. Perhaps there was something about me that made me unlovable, or maybe success wasn't in my destiny. I began to struggle with anxiety and despair as a result of these ideas. The way our parents handled Jennifer and me appeared to be incompatible with any degree of personal success. Not owning the newest technology or high-end clothing wasn't the only material item I could get over. The difference in sentiment, however, was debility. I felt essentially inadequate, invisible, and unheard. I informed my folks that I had secured a nice job that paid well. As expected, their response was pragmatic. They didn't inquire about my happiness or whether I was looking forward to this new phase of my life. They quickly suggested that I begin saving for Jennifer's upcoming wedding since they viewed it as a chance to make money. It was always about her and getting ready for her needs and desires, even though she wasn't even in a relationship. They appeared to consider my money as just another resource that should be used to Jennifer's advantage. I made an effort to object, saying that I had my own life and financial objectives to think about. They responded with a mixture of amazement and disappointment. What made me so self-centered? Family should have come first, right? The guilt was overwhelming. It was so difficult for me to stand up for myself after years of being trained to prioritize Jennifer. However, I secretly knew that I would never be able to live the life I want if I didn't begin establishing boundaries right away. I thus devised a strategy. To maintain harmony, I would make a little contribution to this fictitious wedding fund, but I would also begin covertly setting aside money for my own aspirations. I've always wanted to launch my own firm, specializing in gowns and frocks for little girls. With my new position, I finally had the opportunity to realize a desire that I had had for years. If only I could successfully negotiate the emotional and financial pitfalls that accompanied my family's dynamics. I wish I could say that as Jennifer and I grew older, things improved. But that isn't the case. As we approached those significant life milestones that every family wants to commemorate, the partiality that characterized our early years only appeared to become stronger. However, certain festivities were more equal than others in our home. The 16-year-old Jennifer suite looked like she was from a movie. With sparkling lights strung from every conceivable location, our backyard was turned into a landscape straight out of a fairy tale. A buffet spread that could feed an army, friends, and family, along with a DJ spinning the newest songs. And for what was termed the year's biggest event, about half the school showed up. In front of a throng of loving visitors, I recall seeing her blow out the candles on her enormous 3-tiered birthday cake. It was her day, her moment. They were all right when they stated so. My own 16th birthday had come and gone with far less fuss 2 years prior. In the morning, I received a happy birthday message, a new book, and a pat on the back from Dad. Please understand that I enjoy reading, and this book was good. However, there was no celebration or get-together of loved ones. For the less fortunate youngster, it was simply another day. Not only was I happy that I wouldn't have to deal with the humiliation of a poorly attended party, but I was also sad because, well, it would have been wonderful to feel special, even for a day. When it came time to make college decisions, the process was repeated. After applying to several schools, I was accepted to a respectable public university. Considering that I handled the application procedure myself with little help, I was pleased with myself. My folks nodded and gave me a little congrats when I informed them. That was all there was to it. There was no family meal out or celebration. I took on extra hours at my part-time work and obtained a modest loan because I was supposed to handle the funds and logistics on my own. But Jennifer's admittance to college was a very other matter. She submitted an application to her ideal school, one of the most prominent private institutions in the nation, when the letter of acceptance showed up. She seems to have healed a worldwide epidemic on her own. The festivities were impromptu and lavish. That following day, my parents organized a tremendous party. The letter congratulated Jennifer and sent champagne and a beautiful cake. Family members I hadn't seen since Jennifer Sweet 16 flocked to our home with presents and congratulations as if she had jumped with joy. I felt like a ghost in my own house as I watched the show from the sidelines throughout the celebration. Nobody inquired about my feelings, plans, or college. Jennifer was the center of attention at all times. Early that night, I recall withdrawing to my room and wiping away the well-known sting of tears. The deep sense of loneliness in my own family and the unshakable sensation of always coming in second were more painful than the lack of attention. Whatever I choose to do, college provided the anonymity and new beginning I so much needed. Nobody knew Jennifer here, and her achievements didn't overwhelm mine. I joined groups, formed friendships, and even began dating. I felt like more than simply Jennifer's elder sibling for the first time. I had my own hobbies and goals, and I was my own person. The injustice at home never completely left my thoughts, even with my newfound independence and personal development. Every phone conversation I had with my parents somehow brought up Jennifer's time at college, her new acquaintances, and the fascinating prospects she was investigating. Responses to my own updates were kind, but uninterested. No matter how rewarding or successful my college experiences were, it was obvious that they would never have the same significance. It was a balancing act to navigate this scenario. I wanted to distance myself from the incessant comparisons and letdowns, but I also wanted to distance myself from them. Despite how elusive they were, I still yearned for my parents' affection and acceptance. Throughout my time at college, this internal struggle accompanied me constantly and served as a reminder of the complex familial bonds that held me together. As graduation drew closer, I prepared myself for yet another round of unfair festivities, even as I made an effort to stand alone. Knowing better than to anticipate any extravagant displays from home, I organized a quiet dinner with friends to commemorate the occasion. Recognizing my progress in spite of the lack of support was bittersweet, but I also realized that I might never be able to live up to Jennifer's standards in my parents' eyes, regardless of what I accomplished. But I was slowly and painfully realizing that maybe I didn't have to. The real world hit me like a ton of bricks after graduation. In addition to having a degree and a lot of ambition, I also realized that I was essentially on my own. To some extent, it was reasonable for my parents to have made it apparent during my time in college that they wanted me to be independent. The independence didn't bother me. I actually wanted it. After being under the shadow of Jennifer for years, the burden of financial expectations they would put on me, however, was something I hadn't expected. For Jennifer's future, not for me. 3 months or so after graduating, I got my first real job. A simple entry-level job at a nearby marketing company wasn't fancy, but it was a first step, and I was committed to moving forward. It was a good wage. Being able to make ends meet without relying on others made me feel proud of myself. I'm hoping for some recognition, perhaps even a tinge of pride, when I first tell my parents about the position. Rather, their response was subdued, as though they had anticipated more. "That's lovely, my love." That was how enthusiastic they were. There was no celebration, phone calls, or dinner to offer congratulations. Just a quick acknowledgement before the topic of discussion returned to Jennifer, as it usually did. At the time, Jennifer was still enrolled in college. She's having a great time at her upscale private institution. My folks paid for all of her expenditures. She periodically contacted me, either to complain about her job or to boast about her social life. I listened, gave counsel, and suppressed the jealous glance that greeted me each time I ended the call. I've been employed for about a year. At home, something changed. My parents began making hints about financial support, particularly how I should begin considering contributing to Jennifer's future costs. Initially, it was modest, simply casual remarks about the expense of living in the city where she wanted to intern, or how costly Jennifer's senior year would be. Subsequently, the suggestions became into requests, which in turn turned into demands. My mom spelled it out clearly one evening during one of our dinners that truly entailed a two-way discourse. "Now that you're working so hard, Tom, we thought it would be great if you could start saving money for Jennifer's graduation and maybe assist her with her student loans when the time comes." I was surprised. "I'm only starting out myself, Mom. In addition to renting, I have loans." "You are the older sibling, though." Her tone was abruptly cut off. "You have an obligation to assist. We invested a lot of money on Jennifer's schooling. It would be unfair if you didn't participate." But I couldn't understand the idea. Just, what about all the unbalanced years and Jennifer's celebrations? Every small victory? While my achievements go unnoticed? What about the fact that Jennifer got everything she needed on a silver platter, while I had to struggle financially through college? As usual, my concerns were dismissed when I attempted to express how unjust and biased this expectation seemed. "It's overly sensitive of you," my father added his voice. "All we're asking for is a little help from the family." I was reeling after the conversation. I felt furious, wounded, and frustrated. I had put a lot of effort into being independent and proving that I could support myself. And now they wanted me to give them my hard-earned cash so they could help the golden kid. The sister, who, in spite of my objections, had never had to worry about money or make any significant sacrifices. The pressure persisted. Every contact I made over the following 4 months appeared to touch on my financial commitments to Jennifer. When I got a little rise at work, my parents thought it was a chance for me to put more money into Jennifer's fund. It seemed as though my only objective was to make sure Jennifer was comfortable and successful, regardless of my own financial objectives and obligations. I consented to a modest monthly donation because I felt confined and compelled. Although it wasn't much, it was what I could afford to forego without endangering my own financial security. Internally, I felt a strong animosity growing against both Jennifer and my parents, but I also hoped that this would placate them and stop the persistent badgering. Our already complex family dynamics were further strained by this financial burden, even though I knew it wasn't totally her responsibility. I had the impression that Jennifer's wants and goals were more important than mine. Money wasn't the only factor. It had to do with the basic injustice that had tainted my connection with my parents for my whole life. I was never the focus. I was always the backup plan and the afterthought. I had to reconsider my connection with my family as a result of the circumstance. I started to distance myself in order to save my own emotional and mental health. I continued to have a cursory contact with Jennifer and my parents and to go to family events. However, I took great care to protect both my financial and personal life. Just when you think you're about to sink, life has a weird way of giving you a lifeline. My $500,000 lottery victory served as that lifeline for me. A lucky break. It was so surprising that I thought I had entered another universe. Even while it was exciting to have $500,000 in my bank account all of a sudden, this windfall also presented new difficulties, especially for my family. On a Tuesday evening, I received the news that I had won. I recall looking at the lottery website, repeatedly refreshing the page because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The numbers were exactly the same. In fact, I had prevailed. This was a huge help after years of eking out a living, budgeting every penny, and feeling like I was perpetually behind on my finances. At first, I kept it a secret. I thought about all the things I could do with the money during a restless night. I considered investing in real estate, paying off my education loans, and perhaps even traveling to Europe. Something I had never imagined was feasible yet, had always dreamt about. Above all, though, I considered my business concept. Specialized clothing brand for young girls. I had been really enthusiastic about it for years, but I had never had the means to follow my ambition. I felt it was time to notify my family a few days after I had scheduled a meeting with a financial counselor and verified the victory with the lottery office. Given our complex past and the continuing financial concerns, I knew this would be a delicate topic. I summoned a meeting of the family. I eventually broke the news after dessert. I was the lottery winner. I spoke, attempting to maintain a steady tone. $500,000. It was an instantaneous and powerful response. My parents gaped at me, and Jennifer let out a shout of delight. There was a brief flurry of laughing hugs and congratulations. Sharing the news and witnessing their sincere joy was a pleasant experience for me. However, the discourse followed a predictable path when the first shock subsided. "Tom, that's amazing. This may be quite beneficial for Jennifer's graduate school, you know." In an optimistic, even anticipatory tone, my mother spoke. "Yes," my father added his voice. "Consider the implications of this for her future. You may pay for all of her overseas schooling. This opportunity comes only once in a lifetime." My stomach nodded. This was just what I had been afraid about. They were already planning for it, even though the funds had just arrived in my account. Plans unrelated to my needs or aspirations. I took a long breath and said, "I've actually been thinking about that. I intend to launch my own company with the funds. Now that I have the opportunity, I can finally accomplish what I've always wanted to do." There was silence in the room. My parents looked at each other. Their faces changed from ones of joy to ones of perplexity and disappointment. However, what about Jennifer? With a hint of incredulity in her voice, my mother questioned, "Do you not believe that your first priority should be to assist your sister?" I sensed the customary urge to prioritize Jennifer's wants over my own, the same guilt beginning to seep in. However, something was different this time. I had the power to alter my own life this time, to seek pleasure for myself. I had no intention of letting that go, never again. I want the best for Jennifer because I adore her. But I need to think about my own future too, I responded firmly. For the most of our life together, I have prioritized her needs before my own. I must now take advantage of this chance for myself. The ensuing discussion was challenging. My parents maintained that it was my responsibility to help Jennifer because I was the elder brother. They accused me of selfishness. Priority should be given to that family. The same old lines. The same old guilt trips. But, for the first time, I refused to back down. I believed that I was in charge of determining my own priorities and making my own judgments. The money wasn't the only factor. Respect was at issue. About at last being recognized as a unique person with my own aspirations. They demanded that I give them all the money so they could enroll Jennifer in a prestigious graduate program overseas. It seems that she had always wanted to study in Europe, and here was my opportunity to fulfill her dream. I was taken aback. I had a once-in-a-lifetime chance to make a difference in my life. They also thought that I would just give everything away to pay for my sister's frivolities. They went crazy when I informed them that I intended to utilize the funds to launch my company. They accused me of being ungrateful and self-centered. They stated that because I didn't prioritize my family, I was a bad brother and son. They said that since our parents had given up everything for us as children, I owed it to Jennifer to support her aspirations. I refused to give them the money, and I kept my position. I clarified that my personal objectives and desires were equally legitimate to Jennifer's. However, they refused to listen. They threatened to force me to leave right now or turn over my lotto winnings. I made the difficult decision to leave. After gathering my belongings, I located a modest flat on the other side of town. Since then, I haven't spoken to my sister or parents. I occasionally question whether I made the proper decision and feel bad about it. However, for the first time in my life, another aspect of me feels liberated. Edit. I had no idea this post would become so popular. I appreciate all of your encouraging remarks and suggestions. I have perused everything and value the viewpoint. I'll provide an update shortly that includes additional information about the current state of affairs. First update. A lot has transpired in the 3 months since I made my first post. I wanted to provide an update on my family's circumstances and my future goals. I poured myself into my job after leaving my parents' house. In order to launch my firm, I was committed to save as much money as I could. However, I also wanted to show myself that I was capable of achieving success on my own terms. My folks contacted me about a month after I departed. At first, I thought they may want to get back together, but it soon became apparent they had other plans. They began by stating that they wanted to make apologies since they missed me. The true cause for the call was then dropped. Jennifer had apparently been admitted into a renowned London University's graduate program of her dreams. Naturally, my parents were overjoyed, but there was a catch. The living and tuition costs were prohibitive. Their savings were not quite sufficient to pay it. I was able to help with it. They asked me to give them a sizable chunk of my lotto money so they could pay for Jennifer's schooling. They assured me that they would reimburse me in due time, but I was aware that this was improbable. They put on a strong guilt trip when I hesitated. They discussed how this was Jennifer's one chance at her aspirations, how she would be distraught if she couldn't go, and how, if I didn't help, I would be destroying her future. I refused to back down and kept my ground. I reiterated that I was starting my own business with that money. They were irate and once more accused me of selfishness. In fact, my mother responded, "I suppose the money has changed you. Your family used to be important to you." That hurt a lot. Even when my family didn't seem to care all that much about me, I still cared about them. However, I knew then and there that nothing I ever accomplished would satisfy them. In their eyes, I would always be the villain, unless I catered to all of their desires. I decided as a result. I informed them that I had finished serving as their ATM, that even though I loved them, I needed to prioritize myself for once, and that perhaps we needed some time apart if they couldn't respect my decisions. It was not warmly received by them. Many people were sobbing and shouting. My father threatened to kill me if I didn't assist Jennifer. I eventually had to stop the call in the middle of my outburst. It was among the most difficult things I have ever done. I temporarily banned their numbers after that call. I needed time to think things through and concentrate on my objectives. I poured myself into organizing the launch of my company. I conducted extensive research, connected with other company owners, and began creating a strong business strategy. I made the decision to leave my day job about a month ago in order to devote all of my time to my business. It was thrilling, as well as frightening. I felt like I had real power over my destiny for the first time in my life. Over the past 2 weeks, I've been organizing and setting up my workshop. A few part-time seamstresses have been employed to assist with manufacturing. We're only starting off with an internet store. But if things go well, I want to open physical stores as well. I'm almost ready to release my first line of skirts and frocks for girls. I'm anxious, but I'm also eager to see how people react. Every design is the result of my heart and soul, and I firmly believe in the caliber of our final goods. There have been occasions when I've questioned whether I'm making a big mistake. However, I then remind myself of my progress and how much happy I am now that I am living my life as I see fit. Neither Jennifer nor my parents have contacted me yet. A part of me wishes things were different and misses them. However, I feel lighter and more liberated than I have in years. I'm concentrating on creating the life I desire and learning to accept the distance. That's the current situation. A new chapter in my life is about to begin with the launch of my ideal business. Though anxious, I have hope for the future. Once again, I want to thank everyone for their encouragement and support. It gave me the courage to keep my stance and go for my objectives. As the business launch progresses, I'll provide you with another update and whether my family has undergone any recent changes. Good luck to me. The second update. About 6 months have passed since my previous post, and I wanted to discuss some significant recent advancements. Let's start with some positive news. My clothing company has flourished. With consistent sales and a large number of returning customers, our online business has been performing quite well. The dresses and gowns have been well received, particularly our collection of sibling ensembles that match. Some well-known parenting websites have even highlighted some of our designs. I made the bold decision to create a modest physical and mortar store around 2 months ago. Although it was nerve-wracking, so far it's been going well. Seeing little girls waltz about the store and try on our gowns in person is truly something amazing. It makes all of the effort seem worthwhile. Even though I've been working long hours, I enjoy what I do. I feel proud of my achievements and genuinely fulfilled for the first time in my life. I completed it entirely on my own terms, which is the finest part. The bad news comes next. My folks gave me an unexpected call last week. I nearly didn't respond, but I felt compelled to. There was a problem as soon as I picked it up. My dad seemed more reserved than I had ever heard him, and my mom was sobbing. Jennifer had gotten herself into some severe difficulty, they informed me. She had apparently been applying to graduate schools while working part-time at a local boutique. She had been receiving financial support from my parents, but it was insufficient to cover her extravagant lifestyle. Jennifer had so begun pilfering cash from the workplace register. After getting away with it for a time, she was ultimately discovered trying to embezzle money. Jennifer was taken into custody when the business owner phoned the police. My folks were in a panic. They lacked sufficient funds for both bail and legal representation. They were phoning to request, or rather implore, my assistance. To get Jennifer out of jail and begin constructing her case, they need several $1,000s. I felt torn. On the one hand, their treatment of me still caused me pain. A part of me wanted to inform them that they had to lie in their own bed after making it. However, I was aware that jail might be a scary place, particularly for a young lady. I gave it some thought and chose to assist, but according to my terms, I consented to cover Jennifer's bail costs. However, I clarified that this was a one-time occurrence. I informed my parents that I would give the bail bondsman the money instead of them. I further clarified that this did not imply that I was giving them access to my money whenever they so desired. Though somewhat surprised by my circumstances, they were appreciative. They didn't argue or try to persuade me to give more for once. I believe they eventually realized they couldn't continue to take me for granted because of how serious the issue was. Following Jennifer's discharge, my parents gave me another call. They spoke in a different tone this time. In fact, they expressed regret for the way they had treated me throughout the years. They said that after watching me thrive in my business while Jennifer struggled, they realized how unjust they had been. They said they missed me and wanted to make things right, so they asked if I would think about going back home. Though cautious, I was moved. I informed them that although I was grateful for the apologies, I was content to live on my own. I proposed that we begin with baby steps. To gradually mend our connection, perhaps we might have a family meal once a month. Seemingly realizing that they couldn't just expect everything to return to normal overnight, they agreed. We've already eaten 2 dinners, and although we're still a little uncomfortable, we feel like we're getting better. Regarding Jennifer, she is being charged with some very serious offenses. My parents are frantically trying to get a reputable attorney for her. I'm grateful that they haven't asked for additional money. I hope this wakes her up so we can get our act together. That's the current situation. My company is doing really well. I'm feeling more comfortable and confident than ever, and I'm carefully repairing my relationship with my family.